Welcome to The Business of Family, the podcast where we explore the stories, challenges, and opportunities of family businesses. I'm your host, Tammy Buss, and I'm a family business survivor and also a family business advisor. In this show, we will be talking with family business leaders and experts to bring you insights and inspiration so you too can survive your family business journey. Whether you're a founder, a successor, a professional, or just curious about family businesses, this podcast is for you. Okay, so today we actually have two guests in the studio. We have a repeat, which is Peder Madsen from CCR Build and Remodel, and we have his dad, Arne, here today. And I'm so thankful for the both of you to come in. And you had such a great podcast, Peder. Yeah, we had to have you back.
Oh, yeah. High viewership?
High viewership.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So,
what was it all about?
It was his journey into the business, but I want to hear your journey. So we're going to start with you, Arne, and tell us the story of how CCR was actually formed. How did you begin CCR? By the way, just before we get started, whenever I see CCR, I think of Creedence Clearwater Revival.
I think it was only 10 years ago we got him the best of.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Anyway, so tell us about CCR.
Well, CCR was not necessarily created from day one. It was, I was trying to come up with sort of a slang that kind of worked. So I came up with creative carpentry and remodel. So that was kind of my first go at coming up with a name. Tree is because that's where I started in trimming cabinets, and creative was basically anything I do has always been creative. It's gone through my mind many times. And I created from a lot of different factors I see you come across every day. Mm-hmm. So anything I build is not something that starts from a box. It starts from many pieces that get put together. Mm-hmm. So I think that's always been my creative part of my life, and the start of the business. Remodeling came along with the carpentry because in the beginning I didn't really only do carpentry, cabinets, trimming, and that sort of stuff, a lot of railings and whatever. And then I slowly worked into smaller renovation projects. And there was a lady that I came out to one day and she said, "Well, you're a carpenter, you're not a builder." And I said, "Well, I build stuff." "Well, you say you're creative carpentry." So then I thought about it, and then I changed the name to CCR because I took the three letters, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and turned it into CCR Building and Remodeling. So I added a building into it. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how that started. And don't ask me how long ago that was because I have no clue.
So you went from doing cabinets trimming, very intricate, very detailed work.
Yeah.
And then how did you get into the whole rebuild or remodel? Like when did that evolution? Was that sort of just a natural evolution? Like you were doing it on your own. How did you end up getting employees and
Well, basically when I farm boy, I wanted to get into something. I was actually thinking about going into painting because I knew a painter there. So, but my wife worked with somebody, and her husband was a carpenter. Mm-hmm. And so I started working for him and worked for him for 3 years, and that's basically all I did. I was trimming houses for all the builders in London. And we built a number of cabinets, kitchens, and all that sort of stuff. And I did a lot of railings in houses, so we did a lot of that stuff. At the same time, that would have been put a big addition on our house. If I started with cabinetry, then I started putting a big building together, and then I slowly got into remodeling internal and then remodeling exterior. So I think I've been building for probably, how long have I been in business? 35? Probably for the last 25, 36. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Goes by quickly, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So Peder, we've had you on before and we've talked about your story. But what was it like actually watching your dad build this business?
You know, I don't know, time just flies, and my ADHD doesn't let me fully appreciate, you know, what I'm watching. You know, I remember growing up, and, you know, my dad would take us to, you know, different proposals. He'd be going to, like, meet a client and going to present on a job. And I really did, I guess at first I didn't really understand it. I just knew that he was always very busy, and he was always very passionate about what he was doing. And I do sort of recall, you know, our house that we lived in Oak Ridge prior to the reno. And then I remember, and I see the photos of everything that he did, and he made this very grand space. So, you know, I guess I never really took too much of a, you know, big focus, or like, this is something I may want to do as I get older. It was just, you know, what my dad did, you know.
And Arne, when did you think that it would be a good idea for Peter to join the business, or what was your sort of vision of having this business carry on?
To be quite honest, I probably never thought about it. It was, I never associated with any people in that sort of way of understanding what that was all about. I did belong to the home builders, and we did have some meetings in Toronto every year, and it did come up there about succession, but it was never really something that I thought about that Peter or Christina would be getting into. And I guess one of the disadvantages being a business owner, you're too busy doing what you're doing, you kind of forget about the family, you forget about your kids. It's not that you forget, but...
Well, it is a kid. It's your firstborn, right?
No, but it's...
It's your favorite child.
Hey, that was the third born.
I always looked up to a trade, one of the trade contractor, and he would say, well, Arne, I got to go because I got to go and coach soccer. And it was 4 o'clock, and say, how can you go and coach soccer? Like, you're not done your job. But that was his thing. It didn't matter what time it was. When the kids needed to play soccer and he was coaching, he was going. Mm-hmm. So I never quite understood it, that important of it. So again, from that fashion, I never really, from a family perspective, I haven't necessarily followed family and how they're growing up, other than the teenage years, and my wife and our kids were going through a lot of stuff over a number of years. It was no different than most other family. Mm-hmm. Like I know my wife, one of her co-workers, they were literally going through hell with some of their kids. So I never really thought about running a business and associating it with having Peter or Christina come and be part of it. Mm-hmm. I think what it kind of started out as was more like, hey Pete, you cannot just sit around, you gotta do something. So each had a job, but it didn't last very well, so you might as well come and do something for the company.
Get off the couch.
Get off the couch.
Put away the video games.
I put that on your retirement video. I say, thank you very much for, you know, turning The Simpsons off the TV and kicking me off the couch.
Yeah. So that's really the beginning of Peter started working at the company. He more like started working at the low level, and he wasn't necessarily...
Not by choice. Wasn't by his choice.
It was not his choice, no.
I do remember, just like to kind of jump in there, I'll never forget, you know, when we went out for lunch. I think I remember what I had. It was a turkey bacon club with some French fries. It was at Four Seasons, because you wanted to, you know, I was sort of in the business, you know, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and just dabbling and watching The Simpsons and hanging out on the couch. And you took me out for lunch, and you said that I should, you know, like, is this something I would want to take seriously, and I should consider it? And I remember I asked you, I said, well, surely at some point we're going to get rid of all the carpet in all the bathrooms across, you know, London, Ontario. Like, are we going to run out of houses to renovate? And you said, oh, heck no, there's plenty of work out there. You know, I had just broken up with a girl at the time, and I remember it was like a bit of I had to figure out, what am I doing with my life? You know, I did own a house, and, you know, so I had some sense of responsibility, and it was just the right time, the right place, and you said the right things. And it kind of gripped me, and I said, okay, well, like, I'm buckling up, and I'm going for it.
So was that around 2000?
Something like that. Yeah.
So what was it like then working side by side with your son?
I didn't work with my son.
That's probably a good thing.
You worked against me. No, I'm just kidding.
Family, it's always been well known that it's hard for kids and parents to work together for whatever reasons. And I'd watched it in other situations too. So I was more like still running, well, I was running a business. I was doing more of the paperwork. So Peter was helping in the field. He was working with the carpenters. So he was more like on the shovel, broom, doing some tools at that time. And whether he was popular between the crew is somebody that can make that decision. But he came around, just like I said all along. My wife thought this is going to be a long lost son. But
Very positive podcast.
yeah, it was.
Oh, it's not the first.
I've always had a positive outlook on life. Sometimes it's a little opposite, but I've always believed that all kids come around because I've seen it, and I've seen it forever. So for parents to feel that their kids are not getting into something that's worthwhile at the end of the day, I know there was a plumber one time, the guy said, yeah, finally he's starting to work. He's 35, he finally grew up. So some kids or they don't grow up till they're later in life.
Some never do.
Some never do. In 2008, how old was Peter there? 30, 20?
20. No, well, 22, I guess, in 2008. But I think I know it was right when I was 20. Because I was 20 years old when
years ago.
we
Well,
went out
that's
for that
about right.
fateful lunch.
2008, and that's about 18
And you were
years
still
ago.
laying on the couch at 20?
No, I mean, he kicked me out to go work for the company for a little while. And then, but it was 20 when he said, listen, you're going to do this or you're not going to do this.
Yeah.
What are you thinking here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, fast forward, here we are. Now you're retired. You've transferred the business. The succession plan is complete.
Mm-hmm.
Peter is now the new owner. What's it like watching him, with this business and develop it under his own leadership?
I wish I had some of that insight when I was his age. So I'm going through a time where I wish I'd done things different, things I could have done different. I'm proud of what he does today, or how he has taken the lead of running a business from the business side. I was running a business from the miter saw side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's, a lot of times with first generation founders, right? It's you're right in the business, working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
The next gen sort of sees the business and works on the business.
Mm-hmm.
But what was your hardest thing stepping back?
Actually, there really wasn't anything hard about stepping back. I kind of got retired, I think. I was the designer, and Peter kept saying, well, we'll hire designers and you can help them design. But again, I'm not a person to really go after things in terms of if somebody's doing the job. So I felt I was kind of falling out of the whole design. I was falling out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
It was not really by choice, but to be honest, when Peter said we're doing this transition, because somebody had to say it, and Peter did say it, and I was fine with it, and I'm happy that it happened, because he's doing a lot better job at it than I am, and then I was.
Well, it's a different role, right? You're running the business, you were doing the design and the actual right in the day-to-day grind.
Well, and I always do say this, just to jump in there, because
Yeah.
he'll always, kind of give himself a little bit of a hard time for not, running the business in this way or that way. But truthfully, I don't know what I would be doing, because I would never have had the guts to create a business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think, and I don't know what the word for it is. I don't know. Is entrepreneur just someone who can start a business, or I'm not?
Yeah, well, and in a lot of cases, I think it's an accidental entrepreneur. Like your dad was doing work, and then it just sort of evolved. It became a business, and then you get help, and you need more help, and you need more help, but you're still doing your original role, or you're involved in everything, because when you start out, you have to do everything, right?
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
Probably I didn't let go of that part and then jump into the other seat.
Which is hard.
Which
It is hard.
Which is probably hard.
Because your skill set is the actual doing, right?
Yeah.
It's that and I do think that the business side and the operation, or sort of the the activity side, and then the business operations is sort of two different skill sets, right? And you tend to excel at one when you're the founder, one side or the other.
Well, another thing that he was really good at was tenacity. He would, like, we wouldn't have hired our estimator, and he says that, I hired the designer and I wanted him to, kind of be more of a mentor, but it really started with him pushing me, we need this. And then he would just say, just go get it. And I would always say, you can't just plug someone into a seat. There's training, there's this, that, other thing. And so I have analysis paralysis where I will, really stop and pause. And he had this entrepreneurial, like, gut instinct to, like, go and make it happen. And,
Right.
and it's that you need in order to, like, set the fire and rocket away with the business in the first place. So, I've learned that. I think I've got a little bit more tenacity now, but again, that was from witnessing his tenacity and realizing, in retrospect, like, the business wouldn't even be here if I didn't, take his kicking me off the couch and then kicking me to hire a designer and kicking me to hire an estimator, and then I look back and say, really, if he didn't push all of those things, like, who knows where I'd be right now.
And would you say that's sort of the hardest part of stepping up into this, was taking on that tenacity?
The hardest part for me is, again, maybe it's, I don't know if this is a second gen thing or what, if it's just my analysis paralysis, but I had to figure out what this business was, how it operated, before I could start making tweaks. And that just took me some time. And then you get comfortable, and then you feel knowledgeable, and you trust your instincts, and then you get the tenacity. Because I'm, I always like to lay out the next 6 steps before me so I can analyze them as I'm walking, and he would be like, reaching behind him, grabbing one and doing a cartwheel and throwing it down, and, like, very gymnastically making it work. And so I think it just took me maybe a little longer, and I don't know, maybe that's a question for another podcast. Like, is tenacity just naturally born out of the founder, and then it's like it's harder to come by for the second generation, or is that a Peder Madsen thing? I don't know.
It could be. Well, a lot of it's, the entrepreneur side, right? Are you an entrepreneur, or do you sort of, did you learn it? Is that sort of your natural instinct? And again, sometimes they're accidental. Right?
It took a while for Peter to get on that boat that we do need more people to do what we do, because he was just afraid of running out of money, and even I was afraid or not, I knew we were running behind of designing, running behind of getting things ready. So that was costing us frustration by not having things ready when we needed it, or we took on too much work without having enough people to make it happen. So so there was a number of disagreement in terms of, we need that person, no, we don't need that person, well, I can't do it without, well, you gotta do it. So I'm not necessarily been afraid to hire. Like, I've hired a lot of people over my years, and like Peter say, he tenacity. I was not afraid to, let's say, hire somebody whether it worked or not, because I learned from it. I didn't learn fast enough, perhaps, in many ways, but in the beginning, Peter was not adapt to really see we need that. But I see now that he's gone the other way. That
Now I spend money.
yeah,
Now I have fun. Well, and ultimately, like, he used his drive and determination and just gut instinct to start the business, and then he lent it to me as we were building the business. And it was really an interesting yin and a yang, where I was the more cautious, safe player, and he was really the risk taker. And I think in order to really have a business grow and boom, you have to take risks. You can't not do that. And so I really credit him to a lot of the success that I had as I started to take on more of a business role. And then when he did retire, it was an interesting thing, because I had moments of fear where I was like, oh man, if I don't have the guy that's, like, kicking me out the nest over and over again, well, what is going to happen to this thing? And so, yeah.
What's the biggest lesson you think you've learned by working working beside your dad prior to taking over?
I think it's you know, I was working, one of our painters a long time ago, he said, Pete, your dad doesn't sell these projects because of his knowledge or because of his experience or like how he does what he does. He sells it by how he talks. And I never forget that, because he had said he's just such a kind, caring, modest, passionate guy, and people really can gravitate to that. And I think I took that and I like embedded it, you know, planted a seed inside of me, and I've taken his approach to people and tried to really make that my approach to everything. You know, we do some jobs with in some complex situations where I have multiple designers and trades and homeowners, and everyone has a different opinion. And this one designer that'll bring us in says, Pete, I need you there because you're the diplomat. And it's just because I listen. And I think my dad always was a good listener, and he always wanted what was best for people. And that's ultimately everything else will happen. But I think if you that's the core that I think I really took from him.
And Arne, now that you've been retired for a bit and you've seen Peter grow this business, what do you see as the future? What would you like to see your legacy be for this company?
Again, a lot of these words are new to me. Not new, but it's just legacy. Peter was the first one that brought it up about CCR legacy. Well, I'm happy. I'm excited to see that CCR has gotten to a point where they are now recognized in the industry, recognized in the community. Peter have done a huge job growing the business and making it known in the community. I think he's done a lot for the community as well, and I believe he was able to do that because the business did well. Like I think in one way I always given back to community. And I'm happy to see now Peter's doing the same thing. And the legacy, what's a legacy?
Oh, what you'd like to see happen, like what you want to be remembered for, or what you want CCR to be remembered for or known for.
Well, that legacy, like from Peter throwing this, what was it called again? Retirement party. I knew nothing was coming up. So we drove out to this place, and somebody met me at the front and let me in there, and I didn't know what was going on. I saw all these people that I knew, and it still took me a while before it started sinking in, but this is always, the reason why I kept doing what I kept doing was because people came to me and say thank you. That's the only reason why I kept going, because running a business, there's not a lot of thanks. Running a business, there's a lot of shit running a business. But,
there is.
But having a customer, and I still remember a customer way back in the beginning, he says, what do I owe you? I figured it out and say, I think you owe me $2,000. Here's $2,200. Why? Contractor always forget about a couple of things, so I want to make sure you're looked after, so he gave me an extra $200. I never forget that. And that's the appreciation from the customer that have kept me going for all these years. And I'm happy to see that Peter is growing it in the same way, because he brought a lot of customers in that came to me after a while that was happening and say, wow, your son is he's quite an amazing guy. Thank you.
Surprise.
Well, he is. So believe it or not, we're out of time. See how fast that goes? So I always like to end a podcast with a bit of advice. So what are 3 pieces of advice that you would like to give to other family businesses? Whether it be succession, handing off, bringing in family to the business. What would your 3 pieces of advice be? I get
one big one is to have the discussion, separate the family discussion from the business discussion as early as possible. You know, we never really had that, and we tried to, you know, I remember we would do these Friday morning car rides where sometimes we're just driving aimlessly and just sometimes talking about nothing, but it was just to get away, and then we'd have little gleams of insight. And it's too hard to separate at the dinner table, you know, those things, and I think there should be a forced mechanism, and we brought you in to help us with that. Because you got to put on a different hat too. And that's a hard thing to do, to switch your personality.
Put your business hat, your family hat, your ownership hat. Yeah. So
the earlier you can do that, even I'm going to try to do it with my kids, and I have no, push for them to get in the business, but I don't really want to be talking about business at the dinner table. I want to talk about family, and if we want to talk about business, we should have a forum for that.
I like it. Arne?
So again, way back, there was something about a succession through a meeting but I never picked up on it. But I think any business should look at it early, and if you can't talk about it, which in my case I couldn't, I think it should be something that should be part of a business plan at some point, and a third party have to be brought in. Like some business can finally do it over and transition it, where I see a lot of families, there's no way that they're going to manage that.
So it's a difficult conversation.
A third party is a necessity to do a successful
succession. That's like a tough word. Successful succession. Say that 3 times.
Yeah. No, that would be my strong advice, to seek out people that can help.
Oh, this is like a
Tammy,
sales.
you've done a great job.
This is like a sales thing for me.
I feel like that was my advice on the last podcast too.
Well, yeah, of course. I think what we're trying to get to is that a lot of the advice is the same. It's learned, lessons learned, and you wish you'd have done it earlier, right? So you hope to get through to some families to say, you know what, that's been a consistent theme. Maybe we should start to think about it. And what's the last one, Peter?
The last one. That, sort of along the same lines, but even right now we're going through, like, we have our leadership team, and we talk about the vision of the business and so on and so forth. I think, having like time to each have your own vision of what the business is, and to write it down, and then to meet mutually, again, maybe with a third party, because we all speak differently. We all have different personalities, and even though we've grown up together, and it's important to have someone help us facilitate that. But I don't know that my dad and I always had the same vision for the company, and if we took more time to understand our own unique visions, and then found what was blending, like when I put the values together, I really tried to think about my dad and what his values were, and what made CCR great, because I didn't want to totally take it off on a different direction, and I think we were successful at that. But it would have made it a lot better if we knew what direction we wanted to go together.
A unified direction.
Earlier on.
Yeah. I love it. That's good. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you coming back in, Peter, and nice to have you in, Arne. I appreciate hearing the stories.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
If you like this episode, subscribe to the Business of Family podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can also find Blue Roots on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On the next show, I'll be back with another amazing guest who will inspire you with their family business insights. Until then, take care and keep it in the family. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, tax, investment, or insurance advice. Before acting on any advice, please contact your personal or company advisors.